here in the morning on Tuesday, 8 o'clock, and it's the 8th of August. Time marching on. We're ready for the 14th chapter of Matthew today. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John, and bound him, and put him in prison, and for Herodias' sake his brother Philip's wife. For John said to him, It is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before him, and pleased Herod. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry, nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them who sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison, and his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And his disciples came and took up the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. When the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they might go into villages, and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they said unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all that eat, and were filled, and they took up the fragments that remained, 12 baskets full. And they that he had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. They cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake to them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Jesus answered and said, Lord, if be thou bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand, and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come in the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth thou art the Son of God. And when they were gone over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place had knowledge of them, they sent it out into all that country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased, and besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, as many as touched were made perfectly whole. Well, John the Baptist was merely a forerunner of Christ. He was also a truth teller. John the Baptist was. He told heard the truth about the fact that he shouldn't be living in divorce. I mean, he shouldn't be having his brother's wife. And anyway, it ended up he lost his head over it. Well, Jesus healed a lot of people. He had compassion toward them and healed their sick. He walked on the water. He fed the hungry. You know, he fed, I don't know how many thousands of people. There were 5,000 people besides women and children. I don't know. 5,000 men besides women and children. So I don't know how many women and children were there. But I would say that if there were 5,000 men, there were probably 5,000 women and children at least. That'd be 10,000 people he fed. With 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Have you ever thought about that? He walked on the water. And Peter walked on the water for a little bit until he started looking at the winds and the waves. You know, when we get our minds off Christ, we start sinking because it's overwhelming. When our eyes are on Christ and on the faith of Christ, we can walk on water. But when our eyes get off Christ and we start looking at all the, you know, I heard a guy yesterday saying it's better to shine the light than curse the darkness. There's a lot of people cursing the darkness right now. These people, they said that if they even touched the hem of his garments, they were made perfectly whole. You know, and so it's quite a statement. If they even touched the hem of his garments, they were made perfectly whole. The question that we must ask ourselves this morning: are we touching the hem of his garment? Are we watching the winds and the travail of the sea, or our eyes on Christ? Are we looking at John the Baptist, or are we looking at Christ? Are we looking at the Waymaker, the Healer, the Redeemer, the Savior, and the King? Are we looking at the one who fed 5,000 men plus women and children with 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Are we looking at the ship out there tossing in the midst of the sea? Or are we looking at the one who made the sea? Are we being afraid when we're seeing Jesus on the sea? Are we listening to his voice when he says, "Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid"? Well, that's the lesson for us today. It's apropos for us today, is it not? There's a song that says, "Turn your eyes on Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace." Well, may the good Lord be with you today is my prayer. God bless.